Okay, we are live.
Okay, great.
Karishma, we are live.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to Winja Talks. I have begun. Hello, can you hear me? Hello, hello.
Hello,
I have begun. Hello, am I audible?
we can hear
Yes,
you.
Karishma, you can go.
Okay. Hello. Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Winja Talks. For those of you who don't community for women in tech, we empower women and we encourage women to participate more in the technological field. The pandemic has been really stressful for all of us, which is why we've come up with Winja Talks. We've invited women from all over the world to speak with us, to participate with us. And today, for the first speaker, we have Pauline, who is an American lawyer, mediator, and an arbitrator. She was a full professor at the Waseda University of Law in Tokyo, Japan from 1995 to 2017. And currently, she is a senior fellow at the Center of Excellence for National Security at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, Nanyang Technological University. Welcome, Pauline. We are really, really obliged to have you here, and I hand over it to you now.
Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are, and hello, India. I'm not new to India. I've been a speaker in India at many conferences, and I was just there in October and November last year. I spoke at the Observer Research Foundation Sci-Fi 2019 conference in Delhi, and I spoke at another very large cybersecurity conference in Delhi in November. And when in India, I wear usually shalwar kameez, so you won't see me now, but I'm not wearing my Indian clothes today. Anyway, I'm in Singapore, and it's Saturday, almost 1 p.m. on Saturday, August 22nd. Today, I'm going to talk to you about some work that I've been doing for over a year, looking at the healthcare sector and transposing the work I've done over the last 18 years or so into this sector, because most information security people are focused on government or financial sector, and the healthcare sector has been kind of neglected at conferences like RSA. I've attended RSA Asia Pacific Japan in Singapore the last 2 years, and almost no one is looking at the healthcare sector. But now with COVID-19, there's more attention being paid to different kinds of things that are happening online. And I'm hoping in the future there will be more attention paid to this sector. So moving along, this is who I am, and here's my email address. And let me explain, you know most of what I do. I have been general editor of a law series called Cybercrime and Security. It's been 3 volumes. It's now increasing to 4 volumes because there's so much happening. And I don't limit myself to law or to technology, but I am interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary because I feel that the lawyers need to know what's going on the tech side, and the tech people need to know what's going on in the law and policy areas. And now in the healthcare area, we need physicians and other medical professionals who understand the other fields. So that's my approach to it. And I also did a book with someone from the United Nations, Ed Gelbstein, who passed away a few years ago, called Law, Policy, and Technology, subtitled Cyber Terrorism, Information Warfare, and Internet Immobilization. This was a worldwide coverage, 500-page book. And Ed was on the tech side. He organized the tech team, and I did the law and policy stuff. So this has been my emphasis all along. And what I'm concerned about is something called silos, which we'll get to in a minute. As far as my affiliations, I'm a member of the American Bar Association, SciTech and international sections. I've been an officer of the American Bar Association and also its section of dispute resolution, and I've organized meetings on dispute resolution in Asia. A good friend is Fali Nariman, who is called the top lawyer in India. I visit the Narimans whenever I'm in New Delhi, and this afternoon there's going to be an event honoring him. His son is a justice of the Supreme Court of India. So I'm not new to India at all. I'm also a member of the International High Technology Crime Investigation Association. I've been a trainer of police at their annual conferences in the States. I've also trained police at the Interpol Global Center for Innovation here in Singapore. And I've been a member of a group called the Regional Asia Information Security Exchange Forum. And we meet once a year or more in a different city in Asia. We've never gotten anyone to come from India. That's why I'm telling you about it. And they're mostly techies, but I'm a law and policy person, and I brief them on what's going on, the trends, and how the law is coping with some of this. I received the Regional Asia Information Security Achievement Award from ISC Squared in Hong Kong in 2017. I did have a photo of that event. It's me with the Japanese team. And I had another photo I wanted to show you of where I used to work. And it's a photo of me in cap and gown with a bunch of very, very stern-faced law professors. So I work with the law people. I work with the tech people. I talk to physicians now, and I'm very multidisciplinary. Okay, so let's go to critical information infrastructure. I'm going to give you some things to read at the end of my presentation, so please have a look, and I have links. Critical infrastructure is defined, and it means, I'm going to be very informal, it means things that you need in order to run a modern country. And then we have critical information infrastructure. And that means when you're running different structures in your economy, which ones are really vital to keep your country going. Now, India has not decided on so many infrastructures. I forget how many, but the healthcare area is not one of India's critical information infrastructures, but some people in India are now talking about it and saying, maybe we should put more emphasis on this and realize how important it is. So I'm hoping India will move ahead, but take a look at the readings at the end of the PowerPoint presentation. The US has declared healthcare a critical information infrastructure. So has Singapore, so has Japan. And they participate in international meetings and share information about the healthcare sector specifically. So hospital administrators and physicians and others will get together to talk about when the technology is applied to the healthcare sector. So I'm hoping that India will move in that direction. I did some research on the ground in Bangalore and in New Delhi in the past year and a half. I visited a very large Indian hospital chain and observed what they did and did not have. And my observation was they're not digitizing a whole lot. And having lived in Japan for about 25 years, I had an e-chart, and the physicians in one hospital where I went for checkups could check my whole record. Didn't matter which doctor I was going to, but they could access diagnoses and what medications I was taking and any treatments. So Japan is quite digitized, and another issue that comes up in the healthcare sector is when the bad people access your personal data, your medical records, and it can be very dangerous to have your data hacked. So we'll be talking about that a little later. So what's the difference? We use the term cybersecurity and information security. I found a nice article in a journal called Analytics in India, a magazine called Analytics India, written by Rohit Chatterjee, published this year. And I think he's got a good grasp of what's going on. It's a simple article. It's a good one to look at. So the idea of cybersecurity is to defend computers and servers and mobile devices and electronic systems and networks and data from malicious attacks. And attacks are divided into different categories, such as network security, application security, information security, operational security, and disaster recovery, along with business recovery. So there's a lot there. And here's the problem. This definition, this word, cybersecurity, it's like an amorphous term. It's not distinct. It doesn't really tell us exactly what's going on. And we find this also, I'll move along to cybercrime in a minute, but we don't have an exact definition. Countries are free to make their own definitions. Professional groups make their own definitions. The people who really make a mess of this are journalists. And a few years ago, they were talking about training journalists in using the right words to describe what's going on. But it's still very vague, very poorly defined. And for me as a lawyer, when I go to a judge, I have to give a definition in law to the judge. And this is quite messy, and it's messy in many places. Okay, so there's cybersecurity. And to me, they include cybercrime within cybersecurity very often. So I think they're talking about some of the things that I do. But then there's information security. How do those people get involved with what I do? So again, it's all over the place, not well defined. Okay, so here's a nice article that I'd like you to take a look at. And this is talking about the difference between cybersecurity and cybercrime and why it matters. Now, the Council of Europe has what's called the Cybercrime Convention. And countries all over the world have become members. I have been at the Council of Europe meetings in Strasbourg, France, at the European Parliament about 15 years in a row. And India has been at the meetings. So have other countries from Asia. But not a lot of countries have ratified it. They have not become members, but they use it as a kind of guide of what is this thing called cybercrime. So it's a good idea for you to know what is included and the difference between cybersecurity and cybercrime. Sometimes people think that cybercrime is within cybersecurity, and it can be. So we may have a data breach, and patient records get stolen, and there's a law, and it says if you hack somebody's medical records, you go to jail. Okay, so some countries may include in their cybercrime laws some cybersecurity issues. It's very complicated, okay, and it's not well defined. So I'm trying to simplify it, but I've given you readings at the end of the presentation if you're interested in reading more and knowing more about this. I don't think it's enough to know how to do just technical work. I think you need to know the big picture of what you're working in. Okay. So recently, we've been seeing more cybercrime involving healthcare. And Interpol published a report this month. And unfortunately, it doesn't mention India specifically. And it's very difficult to get statistics or trends from India specifically. And you or we should work together to get more information about India. But even Asia is not covered enough in the kinds of publications we see from the information security companies. And not much on Asia. And there is quite a growing body of publications on healthcare sector, but they don't cover Asia. They don't cover India. So this is something, it's a needs area. And if any of you are interested in working with this, let me know, and maybe we can do something to cover what's going on in Asia, whether it's a cyber attack on a hospital, I'll get to that in a minute, or if it's a cyber crime where somebody steals money in a scam. There's a lot of that going on where people are misrepresenting that they're selling COVID-19 products, and then people don't receive what they've ordered online. And there are other kinds of issues. So there are 2 Interpol publications, and I think they're worth reading if you have time. I'm sorry, there are 3 of them. Yeah. Okay. So Interpol in the past was usually looking at things like fraud or theft, and we still see cases. The good part about the United States is we are very transparent. So we publish our cases and white papers online, and it's very easy for me to access that for my publication. But when it comes to other countries, they're not as transparent. So again, we need more work. We need more transparency in Asia and in India to know what's going on. What are the trends? What are the threats? Are they similar to what's going on in other countries? So let me give you an example. Romance scams. They were very popular in the United States, in the UK, and in Australia. And the Australian Federal Police have worked with some of the issues. And now they've moved over to this part of the world. But I can't tell you if romance scams are a problem in India. I was aware of some cases that were brought to me, but nobody's publishing about them. So we need academic people who are trained to look at what's going on, and then the tech people have to step in and work on some of these issues, particularly in the healthcare area. Okay, anyway, definition of information security. Okay, so this is what ISC squared prepares people for. SANS Institute is another training organization, and they certify people in information security. Okay, now it's all kinds of data. You see the list here. So again, the information security people can be very important in working with the cybercrime area or in working with healthcare. Let me explain. Excuse me. When you're transferring patient data, when doctors are doing telehealth, and that is a growing trend now, the data could be hacked. In addition, we have the problem called ransomware. And people come in and say, we're going to lock down your hospital data if you don't pay us a lot of money in Bitcoin. And we see this happening to hospitals. But since India is not highly digitized in the health area yet, I don't know if it's a big problem. But as you get more digitized, you also want to get more protective of your data. Now, silos, I mentioned it earlier, that's a problem because you're studying technology, but you need to know the bigger picture of what is the law. And so we've been trying to inject the law and policy into the computer science curricula in some countries, for example, in Australia and New Zealand. And they're still very separate. And the tech people don't understand that they have a place with the law and policy people. Let me give an example. A country wants to design new law, so they don't bring in the tech people. They only have the lawyers, and the lawyers don't have the tech knowledge. So we need to inject this kind of curriculum into the university programs. In other words, in a law faculty, someone's studying to be a lawyer, they need to know about cybercrime and cybersecurity law and information security to a certain degree. Now, some people get 2 degrees. They might have a tech degree and a law degree. But then we have this other sector called the health sector. And the health people are not trained in medical school, for example, to know about information security and cybersecurity. But I do meet physicians who are taken away from their regular work as doctors, and they have to work in hospitals to protect the networks. So there's in all areas, there's a need for people with the tech skills to work with the other people in the other fields and to work collaboratively. But what I've seen recently really concerns me because the tech people in some countries will not work with the law people or the police, and in other countries they will. So this is something some of the Indian universities have come to me and asked me to help because they don't have enough professors to teach in the law schools or in the police academies. So this is something, the interdisciplinary program is really, really important. Okay, so what's the state of things? I'm going to speak generally. Some of my knowledge is based on the US, some Singapore or Japan. So very quickly, their medical data and patient records have been hacked, and sometimes they could potentially be used by bad people to do bad things. So it's very important not to have patient records or other medical data in the hands of the wrong people. Okay. Insurance records. Well, in a country like the United States, there's a lot of private sector insurance coverage. So if the insurance records are stolen, a lot of personal information can be stolen. Now, India has not yet adopted a privacy law, and I keep hearing we're about to pass the legislation. Hasn't happened yet. But it's really important to safeguard all of this kind of material in a hospital or in a medical facility. Okay, now the new area that we have to consider is network connected medical devices. And with 5G networks coming into use, there will be more and more and more network connected devices. Now, this can be very dangerous. There have been recalls of medical devices in the United States, for example, and one of our government agencies, several of them, are concerned about the network connected medical devices. I'll give you some examples. Cardiac pacemakers could be hacked, people could be killed. And during 9/11, Vice President Cheney was put into a protective place in hiding because of the attacks during 9/11 because he had a pacemaker. And that's one standard example. But we have insulin pumps and we have other kinds of devices. So there were recalls of one US manufacturer's products, and the Canadian government got very concerned about safety. So the Canadian government adopted a policy and has been very, very interested in the area of network connected devices. Again, with 5G, the market will be flooded. So in some countries, there are regulations for approval of medical devices, and we have them for ASEAN, and Singapore has good regulations, and US has regulations. Now, the Europeans are pretty advanced in the privacy area, and there's a European agency called ENISA, and they have done a lot of very interesting work, and you can get it from the website, and it's in the readings at the end of my presentation. So the Europeans have GDPR, which is the data protection regulation, and they say that for now, that covers the privacy of patient medical data. But they are supposed to have a new medical data protection regulation. It's supposed to go into effect this year, and they've postponed it till next year because of COVID. So we are going to be more and more technological in the health sector. So you will see some regulations and standards. I have them in the readings. You can look at what Singapore and ASEAN have in place. And there are regulators in various countries who apply standards and do not allow medical devices to be sold in those countries unless they have reviewed the devices. So this is the current state of things, but it's going to be more and more important. And people with IT training and technology knowledge could be very useful in the medical area in these ways. Okay, we have a global skills gap in the information security and cybersecurity fields. And so in 2017, US Department of Health and Human Services issued a healthcare report talking about the skills gap. And I don't know how things are in India. I don't know who's doing the training and at what level the training is occurring, but I see in other countries that there's a recognition that there's a skills gap and a need for people. So with your information security knowledge, and if you're willing to sit down and self-study, many of us have learned that way, you may be able to advance into a new and growing area of IT and information security as the Indian hospitals and medical institutions digitize more and more. Okay, so here again, we have the problem that they are not talking about Asia and India. So this is information, general information. They will claim that it's global, but it may just be based on US. So it's not accurate. We can't get accurate data, precise data. Okay, so what are some major medical hacks? Well, the famous one in Asia is Sing Health. Patient records were stolen, including the records of the Prime Minister of Singapore, and they now are very sensitive about the privacy and security of medical records here in Singapore. There have been other major medical hacks, and I think I've put them into the readings. There have been some very famous ones. And the question is, what are they doing with the patient's files? Okay, now, ransomware is being used. It's not that expensive to get involved in that kind of crime. And they hit hospitals. And we see examples of hospitals that have to turn away patients because they've been attacked, and the criminals have stopped them from accessing their records. Then they demand a lot of money to let the hospitals back in, and sometimes even if they pay the ransom, they do not get access. It's a very messy kind of situation. The FBI has recommended not to pay the ransom, but there are cases in the United States where they have cyber insurance, and the insurance has paid when city governments and public hospitals have been hacked. So this is a serious area because people need to get to hospitals, and it's very serious these days. Okay, so the cybersecurity insurance area is evolving. It's not so popular in Asia. It may be in some countries, but it hasn't been attractive. But in the States, it's been a big area. And the thing is that there's no general kind of insurance policy, but the insurance contracts will say specifically, well, we will cover this, we won't cover that. Your hospital has a specialty in so-and-so, we will not cover. So that might be an area where you might be working to look at whether the hospital has its information security people on board, and whether it has the software, the security software that it should have. Because the insurers might refuse to pay if there is nobody in charge. In the United States, there are information security officers. Well, we have CISOs and CSOs working in hospitals. And I was recently in a meeting with a group of them talking about the current coronavirus situation and how they managed their data. Very interesting area that you might want to look at. Okay, again, the network connected medical devices. I didn't put a definition in, I'm sorry, but the problem is interoperability. In other words, you're in a hospital and there are people bringing in their own devices, and then you have patients who are on network devices, and they can interfere with each other, not intentionally, but they can cause a problem. So the CISO or CSO might have to work on this and decide what kinds of devices should be allowed into the hospital. So this is another issue. I mentioned Canada, and there in the United States, there can be big lawsuits about if people are injured by networked medical devices. So, or if there's been a hack and the institution doesn't have its security in place. I don't know about India. I think when India has more law, people might sue, but I don't know if there has been much in the medical area. Okay, so as I mentioned, Europe's going to have a medical data protection regulation, maybe in a year. They postponed it, but GDPR does cover medical institutions. So if you have Europeans in Indian hospitals and you're dealing with their data, theoretically you could be fined by the Europeans. So you want to know about this, and if you're working with protecting data. Okay, so again, what's India's situation? There's no common digitization of the healthcare sector. When I visited the major Indian hospital chain, they didn't seem to have digitized records on patients. This can be both good and bad. There is discussion, you'll see it in the readings, about cybersecurity and privacy issues in the healthcare sector. But when you don't have law adopted, you can't do a whole lot. So we're waiting to see when the privacy legislation will be adopted by India, and an update of the Indian cybersecurity legislation or new legislation. So we don't know yet. India is doing telehealth. So are many other countries. They have doctors talking to patients online, but those things may need security also because they could be hacked and personal information could be obtained. So India has not yet declared healthcare to be a critical information infrastructure, but from what I've seen in India, Indians are very interested in innovation and new things, and there's a lot going on. There are also research projects, funded projects at places like Columbia University, and they're looking at India's healthcare sector. So it's something that we will be seeing more of as a result of COVID, I think. Okay, so there are labs that review new devices in other countries. There are companies that do this. There's a global, I think it's a nonprofit that looks at medical devices. And as I said, there are regulations and guidelines in other countries that you may want to look at and then discuss, and they may be helpful. There are also international standards for network connected healthcare devices, and there are international meetings. They're not mandatory, but they're guidance, and countries are looking at them and saying, yes, we better consider these issues. I can provide that information to anyone who's interested, just email me. My view is that medical IoT requires some knowledge about the medical and healthcare sector. And there's kind of a debate about this. Some people come into the hospital settings and say, we can use our generic training in information security and just move into the medical sector. But in other places, people are saying, no, you need specific training. So it's a debate. I feel there's a need for specialized in-service training I think lawyers need to know how to look at the medical sector. And I think that doctors need to know, and I think that information security people need to know more. So I'd like to see more in-service training and interdisciplinary collaborative training. Okay, so who's doing the training for the medical sector and cybersecurity and privacy? I'm not seeing enough of it injected into the formal educational institutions. But there are private organizations, and the Israelis are actually pretty on top of the what we call med tech. So they're pretty well connected, and I know that India and Israel have some agreements, and there's some good specialists in Israel. And some are in Singapore, and they can provide training. Okay, so physicians have written about this, their concerns. They're worried about the interoperability of devices in hospitals, that people bring in their own devices and then can interfere with the networked devices. They're concerned about the hacking of medical records. One cancer specialist told me she's worried about the database she keeps on her patients and her research. And as I mentioned, ransomware is a big thing. Okay, and in many countries, there are reviews of devices before they're allowed to be sold in the market. And then once they're in the market, they will be reviewed again. And regulators keep an eye on the network connected medical devices for security reasons. So that's another area in which you might be interested to work. Okay, so my conclusion, and the rest is my reading list. India's in an early stage of healthcare sector digitization, cybersecurity, data privacy, and data protection. There's a willingness to look at innovation. There's a need for legislation and regulation. There's a need for specialized training of sector-specific IT and information security experts, doctors who are aware of medical technology issues, law experts who know how to design policy and legislation so you have the new laws, legislators who understand the evolving issues, and most importantly, collaboration and not silos. So I have great confidence that India is moving quickly in some areas, certainly in the tech area, and I'm hoping to see the evolution in India and possibly Indian experts going abroad to be the go-to people in this niche. Okay, so here are the readings, and I have things for you from the academics, from regular publications that appear online, from ENISA, the European Agency for Information Security. I think their materials are quite good and advanced, and lots of other things. So please read, and there are a few pages of things to read. And send me email questions. I'll be happy to answer you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pauline. It was indeed a very insightful presentation.
Thank you.
Yes. So we have one question from the audience. Pauline, are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah.
What is the question?
So we have one question from the audience. Would you like to answer? answer that?
We're having a sound.
The question is, what is your opinion? Which are the factors explaining that many countries chose not to ratify the cybercrime convention?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Pauline, are you
The
there?
question?
Okay, okay, no issues. We can probably send over. Yes, I'll repeat the question. What is the opinion? Which are the factors explaining that many countries chose not to ratify the cybercrime convention?
I heard a few words,
Are you
but
there?
I heard a few words, but I didn't hear the whole question. Could you
Karishma, can we
repeat?
type the question to her so that
Please,
Pauline
that
can
would
read?
be good. Good, thank you.
You want to
Just
I'm
type
here.
it out.
Yeah,
Just type it
just
out.
type it for
that
me.
many
Yeah.
countries chose? Are you there, Pauline?
Pauline, I think there are some
Yeah,
network interruptions.
Okay, can you write it for me?
that many countries chose not. Are you there, Pauline?
Can you put it into the chat, maybe?
In the chat. Can you see it in the chat now?
I don't, let me see. I see participants, maybe it's here. Let's see. Okay, in the Zoom group chat, please write the question to everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, Karishma, or just share your screen and show the question.
Yeah, okay, I see it now. Okay, well, good. You know, I usually go to the Council of Europe meetings and I sit with the participants from Asia. So I've seen them at the meetings, and then they decide not to adopt the Cybercrime Convention. I think that different countries are in different stages of development. I remember when the Pacific Islands came to me and said, we need help in setting up internet in our country. And I referred them to Carnegie Mellon University in the United States to give them technical assistance to just get started. So I think countries are in different stages of development. And I followed India for many, many years. I've been at IT conferences and law conferences in Delhi. And I remember the early days when you used to have to go out to a public telephone in order to use the internet. And today everybody is very, well, I think most people are in good shape. However, I don't know about the people in rural areas who don't have connections to broadband. I see the same thing in the United States. There are places in the United States where they can't connect to the internet. And that's why 5G may be helpful, but it's kind of in a mess. So I think they may feel that their level of development is different from the development in the West, and they may be reluctant to adopt the Council of Europe standard, but it can be useful as a model for designing your own country's law, and then you use your own country's law. You don't have to adopt all of the Council of Europe standards or factors. So the Philippines has now joined. South Africa has been a member since the beginning. So there are less developed countries that are on board. I forget which country in the Pacific Islands might be a member. I'd have to go to the Council of Europe Cybercrime website. So I think countries were reluctant because of their level of access to the internet, their level of development, and their feeling that the West was maybe not taking into account their needs. And then there are different political systems. So they've tried at the United Nations to have some sort of model law. There's a retired judge from Norway who's been trying to create something via the United Nations, and then nobody agrees. So the Cybercrime Convention is what we've got, and it's at least something that says what you want to do, but they purposely wrote it so that they knew there would be new technologies coming in, so they didn't want to just say, well, cybercrime is use of a computer or use of a, whatever. I mean, I've seen the evolution of devices over the 18 years they've been working with this. So they didn't want to limit what they were talking about. So it's the only model that we have that works even for developing countries like the Philippines.
Okay, yeah, got it. Thank you so much. It was indeed really helpful, and I hope the audience has their doubts cleared. Thank you so much, Pauline. It was great having you speak for us, and we look forward to more such meaningful collaborations with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pauline. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay. So until Pauline, yeah, thank you so much. So we have our next speaker here, Farah. She is working as a security analyst at Inspira Enterprises, and she is a very talented bug bounty hunter. She also has her own YouTube channel, which has content for beginner bug bounty hunters. Welcome, Farah. We are really excited for your talk, and I can hand over to you now.
Thank you, Karishma, for that introduction. And yeah, I'm just going to share my screen now so we can begin.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much.
Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes, we can see your screen, Farah.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm just going to begin by telling you a little bit about myself. So I'm a full-time penetration tester, and in my free time, I also do some bug bounty. And I also recently started a YouTube channel 2 months ago, and I make content for beginner bug bounty hunters and also web application pen testers. So today's talk is about approaching an e-commerce target. And let me start by telling you why e-commerce. So e-commerce has been growing in popularity over the past few years. And there are many reasons for that. The first one is convenience. E-commerce offers a lot of convenience to customers. They can shop 24/7. There's like no barrier, no time barrier. And it also gives a lot of choices. Everyone can explore all their choices in one place at the same time. And more recently, one second. More recently, the popularity has increased due to the pandemic. People don't want to be in contact with each other, so they prefer shopping online. And consumers are people from all kinds of industries, so they might not have a lot of technical knowledge, and they're not very aware about the security implications. They don't know what happens if their data gets leaked, and even if they are aware about cybersecurity, they don't necessarily know how to protect themselves. So that means that if the popularity is increased and if the consumers are not aware about security, the attackers' interest increases. So we, on the security side, have to look at how we can protect e-commerce. So let's look at the types of bugs that we can find in an e-commerce application. So of course, we'll have our technical bugs, the usual XSS, SQL injection, and all of that. But in today's talk, we're going to focus more on the logical bugs, and that are only specific to e-commerce applications. And we'll try to mess with the logic that's applied to the e-commerce application. So let's get on with it. First, let me tell you that burp suit is required for most of these attacks. And in case you don't want to use burp suit, OWASP Zap proxy is also a great alternative. And also that you're more likely to find these bugs on applications that process the payments themselves rather than when they use a third-party CMS like Shopify or Magento, because these are very well tested. So you might not be able to find bugs on platforms that use these third-party CMSs. So the first bug that we're going to talk about is parameter tampering. There are many kinds of parameter tampering, and the first one is price tampering. So since like the name is kind of obvious, but you tamper the amount value in the main request or in subsequent requests or responses. So that means that whenever you're shopping or you're adding to your cart or you're checking out, there's always going to be an amount value that goes along with it. And there might be multiple requests and the amount might also be reflected in some of the responses. So you can try tampering it. Values can be either zero or sometimes even a negative value reduces the price. So the next tampering we have is currency. So when an application uses third-party payment options like PayPal, which deal with a lot of different currencies, the web application might only validate the price parameter. It might forget to validate the currency parameter. And what we can do is if we change the currency, for example, if we change it from say US dollar to Indian rupee, it can make a huge difference, and the change of currency can result in a reduced total. The next kind that we're going to talk about is quantity tampering. In quantity tampering, we can change the quantity to different values, and again, that will result in a reduced total. So you can either change it to a decimal value or a negative value, and the application might respond differently. So this is an example of a price manipulation bug that I found. So as you can see, we have the item price and I've changed it to 1, and that reflected in the cart, and the item was, I could buy that item for 1 rupee. This is an example of a bug that was found on HackerOne, where when an attacker changed the quantity to a negative value, the amount was reduced drastically, and it also received a bounty of $3,500. Next, we have payment method tampering. So applications usually offer a lot of payment methods like COD, credit, debit card, and many more. And sometimes some items are maybe ineligible for cash on delivery. So what you can do is initially you choose a credit or a debit card, and then later in the request you can change the payment method to COD, and the application might get confused and process your payment method. And you can also try adding a non-existent value in the payment options. So let me show you an example of this. This is a bug that was found by Anand Prakash in Uber, and this was the vulnerable request. So as you can see, the payment method is, he changed it to XYZ, and it was accepted by Uber, and he could have ridden for free because the payment method was non-existent. Next, we'll go on to gift code and gift voucher testing. So in this first, what you can do is, if the coupon field does not limit the number of requests that can be sent, you can brute force the coupon field with some generic names, and you might be able to enumerate coupons. Again, on the same point, you can check for the uniqueness of the coupons. How unique are the coupons? Because most of the times they do have generic names. For example, if you have an occasion or a festival, the name of the coupon might just be the name of the festival. So it's very easy to guess the coupons in that case. Another bug that you can check for is using an old coupon through response manipulation. So what this means is, sometimes when a user tries to request or use a coupon, the request goes to the server, and the server responds with details like whether the coupon has been used or whether the coupon is still valid. And you might see a similar parameter in a response body, like is used true. So you can change that to is used false, and the application may accept it. Another bug that we'll check for is price tampering for the discount value. So you can see that in the request body, there might be a parameter saying discount received 100, which is the amount that you receive, and you might change that to a higher amount so you can receive a greater discount. Another bug is quantity tampering of the coupon to increase the number of coupons used. So that means that you can increase the quantity of the coupons from maybe 1 to 2, because sometimes applications generally don't allow more than one coupon to be used. So maybe manipulating the amount in the request may work, and you can increase the number of coupons and receive a greater discount. Next, we're going to talk about race conditions. So let me tell you first what is the race condition. So race condition is when two threads are sent at the same time for the same functionality. So let's imagine that you have a hotel booking website, and two of your customers are trying to book the same hotel room for the same date at the same exact instant. So an attacker, how they can exploit this kind of behavior is they can send multiple requests of the same coupon, and the coupon is valid. So they send multiple requests of that and see if the server accepts more than one request. So I'll show you a diagram. So here this is an attacker, and sending multiple requests of a valid coupon, server might accept one of them. Now let me get into a little bit more technicality of how this would work and why the server would accept more than one. So anytime a user tries to use a coupon or a gift code, there is a check that the server does, and there's a flow to that check. So this is how that flow would work. So step one, the server would check whether the coupon is valid. If it is valid, then step two, the server would then apply the coupon. And then step three, after applying the coupon, it will invalidate the coupon for that particular customer. So where the vulnerability arises over here is when an attacker will make multiple requests at the same instant. It's possible that the coupon value gets applied multiple times. So step two is happening multiple times before step three can even occur. So this is how multiple coupons will get applied, and you will receive a greater discount. So let me show you an example of this. This is a HackerOne report again. Now what this hacker has done is he has bought one gift card and he's redeemed it over and over again using race condition. And that allows him to earn free money. And this bug also received a bounty of $1,500. So race condition is also something that should always be checked for. Okay. Next, we have refund testing. So refund testing is whenever an application offers points or free items or cashback with the purchase, an attacker can abuse these offers. So how it can be done is, imagine if you buy a laptop and after purchasing you get a lot of points, and how you can exploit this is you spend those points buying all kinds of different items on the website, and then you return the laptop back. So if the application is missing a policy for these kind of refunds where, and this could be done with like wallet money or free items as well. An attacker can spend these between the purchase and the refund. And this is how he'll end up earning points or earning wallet money or whatever it is that the application offers. So this is also a test that should be done. Another attack is shipping address. So as we all know that shipping address is something that affects a lot of additional costs. For example, there might be a tax that you have on a shipping address. You might receive the shipping cost for one address might be different from the shipping cost of another address. So this is also something that you should check for. Now let's talk about parameter pollution. Parameter pollution, if we use parameter pollution, we might be able to add more than one shipping address to the request. So this is an example of how the shipping address would work. So the first example has only one shipping address, which is Port Mumbai. And what we do in the second example is we add another parameter. So we are polluting the parameters. So we add two addresses, and this might confuse the application, and it might end up accepting both the addresses. So this could lead to the items being sent to both the addresses. Another thing we should check for is the application may allow you to change your address after placing the order. So again, since the shipping address affects shipping, tax, and additional costs, if you place an order with a shipping address which has a lesser cost maybe, and then after placing the order you change the address to an address which has a higher shipping cost, the application might not account for it, and the application might charge you the lower shipping cost. Okay. Next, we have virtual goods. So virtual goods is anything, the applications that sell virtual and downloadable goods, like any kind of course or a video or a music or application or anything. And this might be vulnerable to IDORs. IDOR stands for Insecure Direct Object Reference. So this is an example of IDOR. So imagine you have a web application called www.shop.com, and on that you have your item, and the item has an ID which is 123. So an IDOR attack is when if you change the ID to 124, you can access 124 as well, even if you have not paid for it, and even if you're not allowed to access it. IDOR allows you to do that. So an attacker may be able to exploit this by simply guessing the URL or simply finding the URL somewhere online and accessing goods that are virtual but paid. We have a lot of other IDORs that we can look for in an e-commerce application. So the first one is we can check if user A can add or delete items from user B's cart by manipulating a user ID. So again, this is an IDOR. Then another attack is if we can change the address ID or the user ID to add user A's shipping address to user B's order. So the next one is you can track another user's order by trying to guess the tracking ID or brute forcing the tracking ID. And the last one is you can check if user A can cancel or modify another user's order. So this is these are the reports and the write-ups that I mentioned in this video. In this talk, sorry, I still think it's my YouTube video. These are the references that I used for making this video, and that's it. So you can stay in touch with me, follow me on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, and you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel to stay in touch with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Farah. It was indeed a very thought-provoking and honest. So, because of the pandemic, most of us spend most of our time on e-commerce websites or
Right.
online and all of that, right? So, we have a couple of questions from the audience. So, would
Sure.
you mind answering them? Okay,
Sure.
great. So, the first question is, your presentation was really thought-provoking and it raised an interesting question. How can I protect my web shop from hackers' attacks? What can I do to prevent any potential harms?
So what you can do is implement server-side checks, because everything that I just explained over here was all done on the client side. You do it all on the client side in the request or the response. So if you implement the server-side check, even if you change any value on the client side, the server has the ultimate check. So the value will not be changed and it will not be reflected.
Okay, okay, got it. Thank you. We have another question. I am watching this presentation as a consumer, and as a consumer, what do you think are the preventive measures that I can take while shopping online?
Okay, so as a consumer, I think consumers are more worried about their payment data and whether their credit cards or whatever that's saved is protected. So one thing that you can do is never shop on a public network, so on a public Wi-Fi, you should avoid that because if there is a hacker sitting and they can probably intercept your traffic if they are on the same network as you. So avoid doing that. You can also use a VPN. It's a virtual private network where your network is very protected. It cannot be intercepted. So in that case, that's what you can do as a consumer. And if you're really paranoid, then just avoid saving your cards online. I think that's the best way.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I personally have noted all these points. Uh, okay. The next question that we have is, what can you do after you have been hacked? What are the first steps to be taken
Um, so as a website, as a web application, or as a consumer?
as a web application?
Okay, so as a web application, if you're hacked, the first thing you should do is, I mean, obviously you should implement all the kind of checks that you have to. And actually, I'm not very aware about that. I mean, all I know is that they can check it. I don't know what you do after you're hacked. I'm not into incident response and stuff. So I don't know.
Okay, okay, great. Uh, we have a couple of questions because this is an interesting topic. The next question is, can you give a demo of the race condition or any other vulnerability for that matter?
Um, Actually, I need to have a vulnerable web application, but maybe stay tuned to my YouTube. This is a good idea. I might be able to do it over there.
Oh, okay, great. Uh, we have another one popping up. What motivated you to become a bounty hunter?
I wasn't into bug bounties. I started my infosec journey by doing internships, and bug bounty was never motivating enough. But like with the pandemic in January, actually, I found myself like without any job or internship, and I didn't know what to do ahead. So bug bounty seemed like a good kind of gig economy kind of thing that I could do. So I got into that thinking that it will be a little bit of short term money and I might be able to learn things along the way. So yeah, those were the main motivators.
Okay, okay, great. Uh, okay, another question. What would you say to our women who want to get into information security?
Um, do not get intimidated by, I mean, I know the ratio is like there are a lot more men than women. So do not get intimidated by that. This field is as much yours as it's anyone else's. So don't let anyone tell you that you're not good enough. That's what I would say.
Oh, that's indeed great
Yeah.
advice and applicable for everybody, all the women in all the fields. They're
Yeah.
not just information security. Yeah, that's great. Okay, great, Farah. We have had a lot of questions. We have had nice answers. I personally am really satisfied with this talk, and I'm sure our audience is as well.
Thank you
So
so
thank you so
much.
much, and we'll definitely stay in touch and look forward to
Yes.
a wonderful collaboration. Thank you,
Thank you so
Farah.
much. Thank you for having me.
Have a great
Bye.
day. Have a great day. Bye bye. Hi guys, this was Farah for you and an interesting talk. The next speaker that we have here is Shikha Pathak. She will be speaking about the privacy law and its implications. As we all know, Personal Data Protection Bill is currently reviewed by a joint parliamentary committee, and the 2019 version of the bill has proposed a major revamp to the existing privacy laws in the country. So this talk will trace the history of privacy laws in the country and then also dwell on the highlights and regulations of the bill. This talk will also emphasize on how the bill will affect enterprises that collect and process personal data. You can say this talk would be like a beginner's guide for anyone wanting to understand how individuals and enterprises will be affected if the Data Protection Bill 2019 becomes an act. So the talk will start at around 12 noon. So you guys can take a short break, you can take a walk, bring more coffee, and stay tuned with us. Thank you.